You're listening to the Tony Kennet Cast on 93 WYPC.
WCYTV here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kennet Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. We've got a lot to tackle this evening, and there is not a lot of time to dig into it. So, the President of the United States is doing a rather classic maneuver that we have seen several times. He gets up in front of the press and says, all right, look, here's the deal. Maybe I'm going to sit down and talk with Maduro, the dictator of Venezuela. Maybe I'm going to get out there and talk with Claudia Sheinbaum. Maybe we're going to strike some cartels in Mexico. Maybe we're going to keep striking the narcoterrorists in Venezuela. Who knows? You'll just have to stick around. But the options are on the table. Here was the president later this afternoon.
Launching strikes in Mexico or putting American troops or American personnel into Mexico to deal with it.
Would I launch strikes in Mexico to stop drugs? It's okay with me. Whatever we have to do to stop drugs. Mexico is... Look, I looked at Mexico City over the weekend. There's some big problems over there. If we had to, would we do there what we've done to the waterways? You know, there's almost no drugs coming in through our waterways anymore. Isn't it down like 85%?
It is, sir. Absolutely.
I don't know who the 15% would be.
Nope.
It wouldn't be you.
No, that's for sure.
No, I think it's been...
Tons and tons of
you would
drugs.
say that's a big signal.
Absolutely.
We have almost no drugs coming into our country by the sea, by, the waterways. And you know why, okay? I mean, it's pretty obvious. Would I do that on the land cars? I would absolutely. Look, every boat we knock out, we save 25,000 American lives. Not to mention the destruction of families. These families are decimated forever. The mother, the father, the children, they never recover really from it. When you lose somebody, like the way they live, if you lose them, but the way they die is horrible.
So the President of the United States is saying, look, there is definite damages that the United States has taken, and then some. That's obviously summarizing a horrible series of decades of abuse from the failed narco state in Mexico. And this puts Claudia Sheinbaum in a really, really rough position. She's not really enjoying life right now as it is. And there's a good reason why. So the first of these is that Claudia Sheinbaum has had rough times ever since she, back in May, made the decision to reject President Trump's request to use the U.S. military to fight the cartels. So Trump essentially said, hey, look, we have a lot of military resources. We have a lot of people who know the region. Your government seems to be struggling a little bit to fight the various cartels operating in Mexico and using Mexico as a staging area that may be from Central and South America. Claudia Sheinbaum said, I believe the Spanish word is no. And then the President of the United States said, all right, well then fine. We will do what we see fit in international waters, for instance. And then Claudia Sheinbaum's refusal turned into a weird endorsement of not going after the cartels. Just about 2 weeks ago, Claudia Sheinbaum was suggesting that she would refuse to send the Mexican military or their National Guard after the cartel. She would refuse to send the federal police after the cartel because it might hurt the cartel members' human rights.
Regresar a la guerra contra el narco no es opción.
Says returning the war to the narcos is not an option. First, because it is outside the framework of the law. She's suggesting that if she sends the federal police to arrest or to kill the cartel members who are holding AK-47s, drugs on their person, and are trafficking women and children, then they might shoot the cartel member. And that's a violation of their human rights. And it's against the law to shoot them unless you pull them over and say, hey, sir, or excuse me, it's Mexico, hey, senor, you stop right there. You put handcuffs on him and then you bring him in front of court and you say, don't you shoot that AK-47, young man. And that's Claudia's approach. Well, it turns out that the youths in Mexico are done with this. They are done. There were a series of protests over the weekend that started out like a lot of things, like protests. So the narco president, the argument that Claudia Sheinbaum is owned by the cartels, there's a lot of evidence to substantiate this. And then, like a lot of protests against the government happen to go, when you march on the Capitol in Mexico City, it then turns into a good old-fashioned riot. Good times. And then the Claudia Sheinbaum administration sent in the goon squad and started arresting teenagers. Here you can see 13, 14, 15-year-old young men being loaded into the backs of these vans. Some of these individuals, according to additional footage from the day, didn't assault federal officers at all. They're being dragged away, and they have not been seen since. Now, here's where things get a little bit awkward, because the academic journalistic class in the North American hemisphere of influence, see, they're really for any left-wing government, period. And so it doesn't matter how bad things get. You'll always have some streamer, some Hassan individual to go to your country and proclaim how wonderful it is while you are beating him with a truncheon. And in this particular instance, we see the exact same thing going on. So according to Seth Harp, who's some academic journalistic goofball, he says, in reality, Sheinbaum's administration is probably the most popular government in the world. Yes, the most popular governments in the world typically have people assaulting the capital city. But we'll get to that here in a second. There's more. He says, quote, there is still a lot of corruption in Mexico, but the president isn't personally corrupt, and things are steadily improving. That's more than we can say in the USA. Ah, yes, pairing up Mexico's stability against the United States' a tale as old as time. Usually those stories end with the United States occupying Mexico City or Veracruz or Tampico. So best of luck to them. Oh, that reminds me. I'm so sorry, I almost forgot. 37 Mexican political candidates were assassinated in the last year. Political stability better than the U.S.? I mean, just 37 political assassinations. So it's a very big mess in the Mexican states. And that also brings us over to Venezuela. There are a series of really rough situations that are developing. And for that, we're going over to our very own Virginia Allen, because I got to say, moving into the weird sphere of praising Nicolas Maduro, moving into the weird sphere of encouraging him to sing John Lennon's Imagine, I wasn't expecting a lot of Democrat senators to do so, but let's get the facts first. Now move over to our senior news producer, as well as the one acting as our defense and foreign correspondent, the best of correspondents, huge, they might say. Virginia Allen, thanks for joining us.
Tony, it's always a pleasure to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's not beat around the bush. Tell us what's going on. You covered the Venezuelan situation over the weekend. I know that's rapidly escalating. What's going on?
It is rapidly escalating, changing really by the minute, even hour. We saw a lot of action unfold over the weekend when President Donald Trump spoke to reporters on Sunday night, and he was asked, are you willing to have a conversation with the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro? And Trump said yes. He said, Maduro wants to talk to me, and his exact words were, I'll talk to anybody. And we have seen that time and time again with this president. He's willing to have conversations with those that previous administrations have not been willing to talk with. Now, this willingness to talk, a critical moment for there to be communication, because keep in mind some of the events that have led up to really this escalation of tension between the United States and Venezuela. So much focus from the Trump administration on the drugs and the cartel activity out of Venezuela. We've seen now upwards of 20 strikes on drug boats in the Caribbean, in
not just the
Eastern
Caribbean.
Pacific.
Yeah, the Eastern Pacific as well at the end of the week. That was, I won't say startling, but I did notice the ocean name change on some of the news reports. Where are those Pacific-based craft coming from?
Yeah, Colombia, Tony, is one of the primary ones, along with Peru and Ecuador, all countries that the Andes mountain range runs through. I've been in those mountains. It's, of course, really treacherous terrain, but because it is such treacherous terrain, it does, I think, give the cartels a real advantage to carry out operations, often with little enforcement from authorities. And so these boats are coming into the waters, and we've seen the Trump administration take decisive action, aka blowing them up, in order to prevent prevent those boats from reaching U.S. shores with those drug loads. And we saw also over the weekend that Secretary Marco Rubio took a really critical step in giving the U.S. even more authority to address the threats of these cartels that are operating in South and Central America, specifically in Venezuela. So the U.S. has now declared one of the large cartels in Venezuela, Cartel de las Soles, as a foreign terrorist organization. Now, this is a cartel that the Trump administration claims Maduro is essentially the head of. Of course, the Maduro regime denies that.
Not just a state-sponsored cartel, essentially the state, they claim, is embedded itself in this particular Cartel de los Soles. And this is one of the things that I noticed in at least some of the coverage over the weekend. When you discuss the Andean nations and the mountain ranges on the Eastern Pacific, all the way up that provide cover for narco operations to operate out of, that's essentially kind of in the mountains and hills style terrorist last minute operations, right? But when it comes to Venezuela, if you have the head of the country, which is essentially operating this large cartel, no wonder there's so much focus on the ports of Venezuela, given that allows for larger shipping, larger coordination. It's right out in the open. It has all of the logistical capacity that major highways and train routes going to those ports carry. So it certainly puts a lot of pressure on the regime instead of just saying kind of a cartel in general, like Tren de Araguas.
Oh, yeah, no, it's highlighting them. It's calling them out and saying, essentially, you can't operate behind the scenes anymore. We are exposing you. We're shedding light on what's happening. And, this is something, of course, that the Maduro regime denies, that they are essentially one and the same with the cartels. And yet we have seen so much corruption, just the fall of Venezuela under the Maduro regime, and how, that nation has gone from being a very prosperous nation with tons of natural resources to, a third world country today. And so the U.S., in addition to all of these actions it's taken, it's also moved the world, not only the U.S.'s, but the world's largest aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald R. Ford, into the Caribbean Sea, just off the coast of Venezuela. This is a massive move, and really is a signal to Venezuela of, we're not going to put up with these shenanigans anymore. The message is very loud and clear from the Trump administration. When asked, is the U.S. going to carry out, direct strikes on Venezuela, the administration has not been clear, saying one way yes or no. I think that's probably a little bit presumptuous to think that the U.S. would do that. But the president has said and confirmed that yes, the intelligence officials have U.S. intelligence officials have been given a green light to carry out covert operations within Venezuela. So the U.S. is taking decisive action, of course, against the corruption in that nation.
Well, Virginia, unfortunately, we're running a little bit short on time. I'd like to have you back later this week. I know I'll be in D.C. later this week, so we might be able to do this in person. I'd like to get your thoughts as well on the situation developing regarding Islamic terror activity, and then getting AI involved, as well as, of course, some of the updates on the really deteriorating situations in Africa. Virginia, thank you so much for keeping an eye on the rest of the world for us.
Always a pleasure, Tony. Thank you for having me.
All right, we got to swing back, pick up the radio crew from the commercial side of things. If you're enjoying, leave a like on the video, maybe a subscribe. Really appreciate those stopping by tonight. Heaven knows we've got a lot more news. Don't go anywhere.
This is the Tony Kennet Cast on 93 WIBC.
Whoever is in charge of naming the operations for law enforcement in the United States government right now deserves a raise. I'm talking one of those essential job hazard pay raises. Right now, Charlotte, North Carolina. All right. Great stuff happening by the Department of Homeland Security. Major immigration sweep through everything. They've called it Operation Charlotte's Web. Incredible stuff. Now, we're going to get to that in a second, but I know you already are very well aware of the media coverage that occurred today. A lot of it was whining, bleeding, just like you saw in Operation Midway in Chicago. Well, not Midway Madness, it was just Midway. Say what?
Apologies. Midway Blitz.
Midway Blitz. Oh, excellent. And then, of course, in Los Angeles, the same kind of bleeding occurred. Democrat Charlotte Councilman-elect J.D. Mazuera, he was very, very upset today. Check it out.
If it really was about public safety, then why out of the 81 folks that were arrested yesterday, only 7 were announced as actual convicted criminals? And we saw this happen in Chicago, where just 62 of them were convicted criminals. And we've seen that less than 5% of them actually had convictions, right? And so, and another stat that's very interesting is that 72% of ICE detainees do not have a criminal record. If anything, their only civil offense is being here undocumented.
So first of all, it is in fact a crime to remain here and evade immigration, customs, and border enforcement infinitely. You just can't do that. The idea that, well, if you cross over the border, a couple of feet, well, that's just a civil offense. Well, sure, if you're here on an international flight, you land at Newark, God have mercy on your soul, and then by some magical feat, you somehow find yourself outside of the airport without going through U.S. Customs. You're not cleared to be in the United States. Yeah, that's a civil offense. And a lot of those are dismissed that happen at other airports where things are not as secure and, again, as sad and gray as Newark. But in this case, no. Staying in the United States, being here illegally, and consistently violating labor laws in this country, economic laws in this country, local and state statutes as well. Yeah, that's not just a civil offense. Now, here's the thing that the Democrat councilmen and media members, academics, they're not getting to today. See, he made it sound like, well, they arrested 100 people and like only, a couple of them were already prior convicted. Listen to this report from News Nation today. Their sources inside the Department of Homeland Security make it clear why after Los Angeles and after Chicago, the Department of Homeland Security and ICE went with Charlotte, North Carolina. Check it out.
Why Charlotte? Well, DHS says it's because the city operates as a sanctuary jurisdiction and criminal illegal immigrants are being released back to the streets instead of being turned over to ICE.
Now, I want you to keep that in mind because the producer here, or the anchor, is going to flip it back and say, well, actually, it's a totally different reason. They said because this acts as a sanctuary city, a sanctuary region, and the illegal immigrants are then released back out into the community if they are detained. So keep that in mind.
Now, we can tell you that there are more than 161,000 illegal immigrants living in the area that have a final order of removal.
Not just there's 160,000. The actual number here, we got confirmation when I was on News Nation this afternoon, 161,003. So 161,003 illegal immigrants living in North Carolina. That's not all. It's 161,000 that have a final order of removal. These are not people who are just here and they haven't had their immigration hearing yet and they're just sitting around looking at each other and it's all wonderful and shucksy doodles. No, these are 161,000 people who have been ordered by a United States judge. GTFO. Get out of here. Your card is revoked. Good day, sir. And it doesn't matter. They've stayed. 6,305 of these people are convicted criminals. In North Carolina, in Charlotte, now a little bit fewer, 6,305 people who should never have been here in the first place are already convicted criminals. 161,000 are here and they have already been ordered to be removed. Now, you may say, well, why does ICE have to go in again? If city authorities, instead of just releasing illegals back out onto the streets, stopped acting as a sanctuary and held the illegals in incarceration and said, hey, feds, we don't have a spare bus from Charlotte to send down to the border with these people we've caught. If you could come pick them up and swing them out to Mexico, Belize, Uganda, Narnia, wherever, get them out of here, that would be great. But a lot of jurisdictions around the country have these little J.D. Mazuera types who like to soft whitewash these illegal immigrants who have committed criminal acts in this country. And then tell the police department to just release them unfettered, go, be free into the communities so that then the feds have to come through and find them themselves. And what do you end up getting out of this? Because this radical rhetoric that they're Gestapoing and disappearing people comes into play. Well, you get the most recent group of violent individuals acting on political means, the transgender community. Here you go.
So what we had here today was assault on a federal officer. This individual assaulted federal officers at a gas station about a mile away and then engaged officers in a high-speed pursuit, failed to yield to our lights and siren.
So what you can see is a dude with saggy man boobs being leaned up against the car. Now, by the way, I didn't play this, but later on in the News Nation clip, the reporter who was reporting live from the scene is about 5 feet back from where this video is being shot, and she just turns around and points at the dude with the boobs and is like, this guy assaulted the cops. I gotta say, News Nation, it was owned by Nexstar. That's some quality reporting right there. Producer Nikki got something on that?
Based on the individual's size compared to the van, that's a big guy.
That's a dude right there.
That is a serious assault right there.
With some serious moves as well. So
assault of the eyes, I meant, but
again, I don't mean to make light of it. Obviously, assaulting a federal officer as blatantly as is reported in this particular situation, yeah, that's a very, very, very bad thing. But I want to make a very specific point here. The transgender violence in this country from mentally unstable individuals, the more we find out about recent political attempted assassinations, and various other assaults and batteries, we discover are, in fact, very closely linked to the transgender and hypersexualized community of the left. And it is a key issue in this country because right now there are some Republicans who are saying, well, I mean, actually, we don't, just because they're trans or they're a furry or, you know, they really like to dress up and have sex in public, that doesn't mean that they're weird. By the way, that's not the comfortable moderate Republican, right? That's like the Groyper far right that has like their own weird furry communities. There are people that are going to try to tell you that abnormal, super hedonistic, overt public sexual behavior is something that's totally normal and mentally stable. It's not. It has never been, and it will never be. And it is, in fact, a marker for doing other mentally unstable things. Someone who tells you they can hear the toaster talking is probably not getting the best mental advice for actions they might take. Thomas Matthew Crooks, the guy who shot at President Trump, missed President Trump and ended up killing Corey Comparatore in Butler, Pennsylvania, the fireman. That particular attempted assassin, again, he did kill someone. He just barely missed his mark of hitting Trump dead on. Well, it appears now he's been interested in furries and other hypersexualized left-wing stuff because, you know, of course. So it appears he was some kind of pseudo-Republican. And then in 2020, 2021, he flipped and started going, right about January 6th, actually, started going really heavily into the gay sex furry stuff. Dressing up in fursuits and pretending you're a dog. Ugh. So he described himself with the pronouns they, them on the platform DeviantArt, which is like an online art community where a lot of furries act like deviants. And 2 accounts linked to Crook's primary email were found on DeviantArt, and the account suggests he had an obsession with scantily clad cartoon characters sporting muscle-bound male bodies and female heads, otherwise known as the guy they just arrested in Charlotte. Sorry. Radio crew, we have to send you to commercial. It's the Tony Kennet cast. We'll see you guys on the side back. Head to the live stream, and then you don't have any commercials. See you guys in a second. All right, like I said, no commercials for the live stream crew, so let's keep on keeping on. So let's get this straight. Charlie Kirk's murderer had a transgender boyfriend and was interested in furry stuff. The man who just tried to kill Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent in February was also a transgender activist. The 2 different transgender activists who have shot up schools, Christian schools specifically. And now, Trump's first would-be assassin turns out to have had significant gender dysphoria and an affiliation, or excuse me, an affection towards the weird furry sexual community. Again, we went through an era of we need to normalize. Remember this? We need to normalize that, like, sometimes people express things just differently than you do. Sometimes that's appropriate. Sometimes you have, people who their love language is saying really nice, sweet things. Sometimes it's getting each other gifts. Sometimes it's just spending time with each other. Gay, furry, weird porn sex. Yeah, I don't think that needs to be on the list. Sorry. The idea that we need to normalize to the point because in a free and loving society, we not only should have things be illegal, but also affirm people in their weird, creepy interests. No, we don't have to do that. You don't have to be platformed on TV. You don't have to be broadcast as normal. You don't have to be allowed to read to children at the library. You don't have to be allowed to present whatever garbage this is in public as though there are no negative effects to society. Producer Nick.
Yeah, I think one thing to take into consideration here is the people that are actually committing these shootings and attempted assassinations. They grew up during this period of the No Child Left Behind policy, where the social movement kind of co-opted the governmental, incentive of keeping children in school, of the normalization of the weirdos in school, is what they would always say. Don't call them weirdos in school.
Yeah, don't call them weird. Don't call them strange. I think of that Saved by the Bell PSA, where they had all of the main characters walk down the stairs and go, freak, weird, strange. And they're
similar to this slippery slope fallacy that in-group then expanded outwards of, the GLAAD programs got co-opted by the furry community, and the furry community got co-opted by the transgender cult, and it just steamrolled right past the window, the normalcy.
So I do want to point this out because I think that one of our comments, Richard Lincoln, again, this idea of toxic empathy, that if you don't affirm someone, then you're a really bad person. There's a really interesting series of studies on the reason some really horrible media products have made it to air in the last couple of years is because no one ever turned down any ideas for fear of being a meanie in the production of the content, whether it's a game, whether it's a movie, whether it's a TV show, and it's produced some really serious garbage. Now, I think more important here, I did see a comment that is rather worthwhile to talk about here. It said, well, what about the conversation about those who touch kids? What about, those who are pedophiles? I will say again, I've said before, if you are convicted of touching children, of sexually assaulting or abusing children, which, by the way, is the number one marker in deviant behavior later on in life, an individual who was sexually abused likely to engage in abnormal sexual behavior. But that said, you should be hanged in the public square. A firing squad is too good. If you abuse children in any way, shape, or form, no matter who you are, doesn't matter, hanged. Public square for all to see. An example made. That should be the point. That should be the case. There's no brokering of an argument there. None. And for that matter, before we head back and pick up the commercial, this does really start to play a bigger role in things when we get to the kind of the congressional trade that seems to be happening over this rabid toxic empathy and what this actually plays out like for normal people. Don't go anywhere. We got to bring back the radio crew. It's the Tony Kennet Cast here on the Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kennet Cast on 93 WIBC.
Wouldn't you know it, we've got even more news to get to this evening. Welcome back to the Tony Kennet Cast. I'm Tony Kennet. A little bit on the federal side of news, and then we'll get into the congressional. China has begun massive purchases of U.S. soybeans. This would be after the Trump administration boxed out the Chinese import of soybeans from Argentina and leveraging more of its Belt and Road initiative in South America and in the Indo-Pacific. Here was Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins today on kind of some of the steady updates that continue in this escalating trade war between the United States and China.
The president has said over and over that he will not leave our soybean farmers and frankly, our farmers in general out in the cold on this. He has been absolutely resolute and almost a dog on a bone, making sure that our soybean farmers and other farmers are at the top of all these trade deals. And certainly Secretary Bessent has as well. So I listened with interest to Scott over the weekend with you and last week saying we're still very confident that when the Chinese committed to buying 12 metric tons that they are going to do that, 12 million. And so I see that moving forward. They have begun to buy a little. I think the nervousness comes in is that 12 million is a lot. And we've already, I think, just got about 330,000 out. But we'll get there. And I think the president has said over and over his relationship with President Xi is very strong. Secretary Bessent, we're going to get that deal signed. It's not even signed yet.
Now that's the key. high scale, high tension, high stakes negotiations. What Trump does. You see him doing this with Maduro. You might be getting ready to talk to Nicolas Maduro again, who is usually out there parading around. Now he's terrified, and I mean full on terrified. He's singing John Lennon's Imagine in front of his crowds in Venezuela in just a shaky voice.
Peace.
It's some sad.
We want peace.
It's some sad stuff. And then of course Claudia Sheinbaum, she's very, very upset and worried. This is in fact how the president operates. Now we'll get back to Linda McMahon on the uselessness of the Department of Education here in just a minute. Really good points by her today. I want to get over to some congressional news and updates. And I mean some really hot dog congressional news, including, you guessed it, a major trade offer. Really exciting stuff. So we'll get to that draft and trade here in just a second. First, Senator Tammy Duckworth of Illinois has notified Immigration Customs Enforcement that she has fired a staffer. I love this next line, who was accused by ICE of pretending to be the attorney of a previously deported illegal alien in an effort to free him from federal custody. Okay, let's talk about the difference between being accused of something and then having done something. We have these really cool things called cameras. Some of them are apps on your phone. And if you go into court, before you even sign your name on the line, here we go back to situations of fraud that are committed on paper. Before you sign the name and say, I'm a lawyer for Jose, whatever, in this particular instance, it's also recorded on the camera when you go into the courtrooms that, yes, you have to declare that you are an attorney or counsel for a defendant. That has to be declared right up front. Why? Because they have to check if you have anything on you before you go back and meet with the client. It's like, wow, that's a really nice cake there. A hacksaw in there? So no, not accused of. All of the evidence there. And anyway, so yeah, that guy's been given the boot, scoot, and boogie. So that brings us to another piece of excellent congressional news. Representative Jasmine Crockett, the Senate candidate hopeful, who's totally going to be different than Beto O'Rourke and Tennessee Titans Colin Allred, has now been caught blowing tens of thousands in campaign cash on luxury hotels, limos, personal security, while she tells Americans to defund the police. So Fox News has dug through her FEC filings. Things are going to be expensive whenever you run a campaign. It's, by the way, the number one reason I'm not going to be running any kind of congressional campaign in the near future at all. This is essentially a pole barn in Indiana. I am not very wealthy. This is a Hagar jacket that came from Amazon. So I don't really understand these numbers growing up a Midwestern kid, but $75,000 in travel and security this year alone. $25,000 plus dollars just on specialized taxi services, limo services, individual charges of $2,700, $2,300, $1,250. Luxury hotels coast to coast. She's not going to be staying at some Holiday Inn. I don't think so. $4,200 at the Ritz-Carlton. $5,300 at the West Hollywood Edition. $2,000 multiple times at Vegas resorts. That's actually a pretty decent deal for Vegas. I'm not too mad about that one. 2 trips to Martha's Vineyard. National Guardsmen and illegals not included. That's about $3,000 each in those 2 trips. And then, of course, trips to San Francisco, not where she's campaigning. Vegas, not where she's campaigning. New York City, not where she's campaigning. Chicago, not where she works nor campaigns. Martha's Vineyard, all of those on campaign funds. So here's the question. Why is it that those running for office, let's say that I'm running for Indiana 6th Congressional. I wake up one morning, I have a stroke, and I decide to go bald, dress in a hoodie, and run for Congress here from Indiana. Shout out to Senator Fetterman of Pennsylvania. Love you. If I decided to run, would it really be ethical for me to book campaign plane tickets to Iowa and San Fran and Dallas and Wisconsin and then up to New York and down to Florida? I just don't see maybe like one trip, for like a larger campaign event. You're going to go see the DNC. Maybe that's why Chicago, whatever. But all of those? Yeah, unethical. I'd say a little unethical. Producer Nick.
It is for the mental health and spiritual strength that it takes to run your campaign.
Spiritual strength. Ooh.
Yeah, Crockett has mentioned it in a few of her videos. That it's a very difficult task.
Amen. In fact, excellent stuff. All right, this brings us to what, in fact, I have been promising. We have a trade alert here on the Tony Kennet Cast. That's right, straight out of Rogers Field. U.S. Senator John Fetterman. A lot of Republicans are calling on him to just go ahead and ditch the left. Go ahead and ditch the left. Come over to the Republican Party. Come on, you're a Bill Clinton populist-y Democrat. But I mean, those are all basically Republicans today anyway. Unless you're a bitter old woman going through menopause and yelling about LGBTQ stuff, or you're a younger woman with a useless degree also complaining about LGBTQ stuff, or you're a multi-ethnic super socialist that we imported. There's no place for you in the Democrat Party. Sorry, you're old, you're white, you come from a working class family. You might as well take the flying leap. And speaking of flying leaps, after Senator Fetterman did, in fact, fall down due to a pretty rough ventral fibrillation, he scuffed up his face pretty roughly. A lot of messages were sent on social media about the senator from Pennsylvania. The messages that were positive were overwhelmingly Republican. The messages that were negative, especially on places like Blue Sky, were overwhelmingly negative. So Republicans positive. Sorry, did I accidentally say Republicans negative? I'm not sure. Republicans very positive. Democrats appeared to be very negative, saying, man, I hope the pavement's okay. Fetterman, I hope he suffers more tragically. He's expected to live. All of these comments about karma from girls who think that licking salt crystals is religious. All of this kinds of nonsense. And go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say about these comments. If you're a leftist, on the left, a Democrat, any form of filling office, in the end, just know that the people that you represent and the people that you believe are truly on your side care just as little about you as they do your political opponents.
Now, there's an interesting comment in the comment section, which I think is kind of curious. It's this, well, AIPAC, the Israelis would keep him in there if he just had a pulse and a spine. The tinfoil comments we'll get to in just a second. But I do want to get to one of the reasons that particular comment, which showed up a lot on the left after his fall. Fetterman made it very clear in an interview that he saw the left, the political left in the United States, as way more cruel to people than those on the right. Check it out.
You said, quote, I've drunk deeply of the venom of both the left and the right. As a connoisseur, I can confirm that the most poisonous, the bitterest, is from the far left.
I usually hate prose from politicians. That's pretty dang good.
That was fire.
That's good. Maybe even some beat poetry snaps are some unironic ones are in play there. Go ahead.
That is pretty remarkable to hear you say that as an elected Democrat. Why?
No. It's just been my personal experience on this thing. And when I asked my digital team, I said, we're on all the platforms. Really, what's kind of the harshest? What's kind of the most personal? And the answer was immediate. They said, "Oh, Blue Sky. It's Blue Sky." And the difference is, the right would say really rough things and names. Some names I won't repeat on TV, but the on the left, it was like they want me to die, or that we're cheering for your next stroke.
I'll say this. I do want to make this clear. I'm called a lot of things. Some of them by members of the right. I have seen a lot of people on the right use some rather nasty words to describe people. I am not seeing a lot of political assassination attempts from those on the right. Not seeing it. Again, scoreboard. Radio crew, we have to send you over to the commercial. We've got to talk about who he's being traded for on the live stream. It's the Tony Kennet Cast.
May I just open us up here in the commercial time by saying the whiplash juxtaposition of his writing versus his verbal
his
acumen
speech, yeah,
is strong.
He like read like a very strong. He's like, come on, it's like most of there's something to that. a lot of
I'm
the generation.
very much a better writer than I am a speaker.
But it's definitely true that a lot of those in kind of I do this too when I write as well. I tend to be more ornate prose kind of a thing. So also Fetterman's being hit as well for in a new book calling Josh Shapiro too driven by political ambition, which is his criticism for a lot of other people in the Democrat Party, is they're just looking to see who they can stab to one up, which really is the mainstay of how Pelosi built the party in the latter half of the 20th century. That said, we've got to look at who he's being traded for. So who he's being traded for is Marjorie Taylor Greene. There is a very small faction of the Republican Party who has become so obsessed with Israel, it is beyond Looney Tunes. It's not just criticizing the Israeli government. I went over to Israel 2 months ago. I had criticisms. I came away with several criticisms. Not an issue there. The issue is that they have now made Israel the center of every conspiracy theory because they can't really just go around and blame, some of the things that you could blame previously in prior administrations because a lot of those things are being cleaned out. It's very easy to just go, oh, it's the Jews. Marjorie Taylor Greene has now taken the representative from Georgia to fighting Trump, or at least I wouldn't say it's a mano-a-mano kind of fight, to drunkenly throwing beer bottles after a rough breakup at the TV screen. So much so that she is going on CNN and apologizing for being a toxic member of the right to those on the left. I wish I was making this up. Here you go.
Congresswoman, you posted on X that President Trump is, with his comments, fueling a, quote, hotbed of threats against you. Obviously, any threats to your safety are completely unacceptable. But we have seen these kinds of attacks or criticism from the president at other people. It's not new. And with respect, I haven't heard you speak out about it until it was directed at you.
Dana, I think that's fair criticism. And I would like to say humbly, I'm sorry for taking part in the toxic politics. It's
boo. Okay. First of all, not the same. Number two, again, political assassinations and open violence, saying some mean words online. Gee, I wonder if there's a difference between the two of them. Yeah, no, I'm not going to be lectured by Miss Ideological Crusade over this. And by the way, the stuff that she's pushing for is a kind of populism, again, that is so steeped in stupid conspiracy theories. I'd like to remind you, her grand theory about Jeffrey Epstein is that secretly it's the Jews. Woo!
I think the right question is to ask is, was Jeffrey Epstein working for Israel? And I'm proud to say I don't take money from AIPAC. I don't take money from any special group of people. I'm just
That's not true, by the way. She absolutely takes groups money, all from different kinds of PACs. Yes, she absolutely does. We got to bring the radio crew back from commercial. We'll touch on this a little bit later. There's far more to enjoy. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kennet Cast here on the Daily Signal.
The Tony Kennet Cast on 93 WIBC.
What a Fool Believes. It really is the right way to bring in the greatest new trade. If we get Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania over to the Republican Party, then it's only fair that the left gets, you guessed it, Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia. She's got quite the record of passing very little or doing anything in Congress that's worthwhile whatsoever. I will say a couple of the catfights with Jasmine Crockett have been very entertaining. And I said at the time, it's like two crackheads fighting outside a Speedway. Or like two moms fighting inside a Walmart on Black Friday, maybe, would be more accurate.
You ever see the TV show Dance Moms?
I have not seen Dance Moms. I've got a little too much testosterone.
The Joe Siwa original TV show.
That's where that little YouTuber, that's where she came from? Oh, that's embarrassing. So like a lot of Dance Moms fighting.
It makes so much sense with her.
Okay, I'll allow it. So whatever you want to call them. Marjorie Taylor Greene, kind of the Jasmine Crockett of I won't even say the right. Her grand theory about why the Epstein files have been hidden is all about the Jews in Israel and that Israel secretly controlling the United States. That's right. Because amazingly, all of those people that AIPAC has given money to, again, an American organization full of Americans that do in fact like Israel. Oh no, the horror. They didn't change their political opinions after they got money. It's like those who support the NRA. They get money from the NRA. Incredible. I know it's great. Those who support the teachers unions, they get money from the teachers union. Whoa! What are you going to tell me next? I know. Other than these shocking things, let's hear the brilliant observations on the conspiracy du jour from Marjorie, as Trump calls her, traitor, Greene.
I think the right question is to ask is, was Jeffrey Epstein working for Israel? And I'm proud to say I don't take money from AIPAC. I don't take money from any special group of people.
Again, not true.
I'm just representing my district and the American people, and so that's what I was referring to.
I just want to be clear. Are you saying Israel is pushing the President of the United States to cover up the Epstein files? And what evidence do you have that is the case? I simply just asked out loud, is there a foreign government? It could be any foreign government, but is a foreign government pushing to keep this covered up?
Again, just to be very, very clear here, just as far as Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was then asked, well, what evidence do you have? If you've got some evidence here, I'll take a look at it. If Jeffrey Epstein really was an Israeli Mossad agent or an agent for the FSB, the successor to the KGB, I'll believe you. Absolutely. Wholeheartedly. No evidence whatsoever of this. None. And believe me, people have looked as hard as they can. Now, as this particular candidate is concerned, I'm looking over at Follow the Money. Yeah, she's received several, in fact, dollars from individuals with, let's say, specialized interests, especially in the populist side of things, who have focused on high subsidization. By the way, that's her right. If you're a candidate, there are groups that say, I like what you believe. I'm going to put money behind you because I like what you believe. Yeah, that's fine. But the reason I bring all of this up, the reason I bring up the incredible trade offers, Representative Jamie Raskin, the rascal himself of Maryland, he's calling it. It's trade time, boys and girls. Bring over Marjorie to the Democrats.
Let me just say a couple more things to you great Florida Democrats. One of them is we are a big tent. We must be a huge, vast tent. I say this is a party that's got room for Marjorie Taylor Greene if she wants to come over. We got room for anybody who wants to stand up for the Constitution.
Unless you're John Fetterman, in which case they want to throw him to the wolves after he hits the pavement first.
And for the Bill of Rights today. One of my colleagues who left from South Carolina, Trey Gowdy, said to me on the way out, he said, Raskin, you're not a bad guy. The problem with you is you're a liberal. I said, you're damn right I'm a liberal. The heart of that word is liberty. And
that's not the heart of the word liberal. We're going to have to do another etymology episode of the Tony Kennet Cast here pretty soon. We're going to let old Rascal Raskin off the hook here for just a quick second. The core of Marjorie Taylor's argument right now, to get attention, is she says Trump and the DOJ, they can snap their fingers right now and they can release all of the documents, every one of them. They can wipe away all the black ink and they can just do it. They can't. You can yell about it as much as you'd like. I could yell about it as much as I'd like. Do I think that eventually these documents need to be released in full? Absolutely. Are there special legal protections for people who might be named in the documents? No. That's not the case. However, two things. Number one, there have been court orders from the Southern District of New York, the Southern District of Florida, which have said no to the Trump administration saying release all the files already. Congress can override the judicial system. Tony, how do you know that? It's this thing called the Constitution. You can read it. It was written a while ago. It sets up the balance of powers. The president must say, you got it, to the executive and the enforcement of the law. Congress, as the legislative branch, can then override the judicial. Guys, we went over this. You should have gone over this. Most of us understand this. There are still a few that happen to be in congressional seats from Georgia who don't know how to read the Constitution. Anyone can get up on a stage and go, I stand for truth and also release the documents. Okay, and also everything is free and I declare bankruptcy. And also Indiana Unibasketball will be just as good as Indiana football. Yeah, those things aren't going to happen. Until we figure out how to clone Coach Sig, it just ain't happening, Captain. So I don't know what to tell you. I'm not going to get into the 2D, 3D, 4D, hungry hippo style chess of the administration and the Epstein stuff. I've already talked about it at length ad nauseum. I've said, yes, Bondi goofed it up in February, and Americans were already not going to be a fan no matter how the files turned out. Now everyone is very much set in their ways. And so if you really think that right now this is the best thing to be spending the time on, I got to be honest with you. I kind of get Trump getting a little bit annoyed. He's got stuff to do. He has the entire Western Hemisphere that is getting a little bit spicy. We are finally dealing with the narco threat, which, by the way, ends the drug problem into this country permanently. People have this weird idea that no matter what we do, drugs will always come pouring into the country. No. You can eliminate infections at the source. That's what he's focused on right now. There's the affordability issue. There's the economy. There's deciding whether he wants to go more Peter Navarro or Jameson Greer or Scott Bessent on tariffs and the trade system. And simply yelling at, Marjorie posting texts and going, I texted Trump. That's incredible. Whoop-de-doo. I text people all the time. I texted your mom. She says you need to stop it. Every day, every single day, we find more ways to disappoint our collective parents. Folks, radio crew, I'm going to level with you. Head over to the live stream, youtube.com/Daily Signal, or over on Rumble, The Daily Signal, and catch the rest of the show. We got to go for the radio sites. Tony Kennet Cast. But we're going to continue on the live stream. That's right, gang. It's time for just a little bonus tonus. Now, I'm going to be extra fair to MTG here. And by that, I mean the same standard that I always hold. She's pointed out that since Trump has come out and said, Marjorie, you're a traitor. And also, I don't think you're funny. That would be the real insult, to be honest. Now, there have been a couple of threats on Marjorie Taylor Greene, according to her over on her X account. She said, quote, the hoax pizza deliveries have started now to my house and my family members. That's a form of doxing. That's not funny. And then she said, update, we've also received a pipe bomb threat on my construction company's office building. Those things are, I know, very brave to say this, those are bad. Whoever has done those things should be arrested, and they should be given the maximum sentence for if there was any real nature or real, maybe I should say, if there was any legitimacy, thank you, to the pipe bomb threat, then they should be, again, hanged in the public square. Terrorism, political assassination and violence, no brokerage for that one there, Chief. So those things can be true. I don't care who it is. You commit an act of violence on an official in the United States, you pay an extra level of punishment than a normal assault or battery. Now, that said, walking into, I'm not even going to read you guys the rest of this. Just to point this out, I'm looking at this right here, right now. She just goes on and on and on and on and on. We get it. Trump getting out here and saying Marjorie Taylor Greene's a traitor, and then saying, see, that means he's putting out a hit on me. No. That's not toxic behavior. If you are a traitor to the ideals of the Republican Party and the mission of the Trump administration, then you have betrayed it. You are, in fact, a traitor to that particular instance. That isn't a call for violence. Again, I am more than happy to make it clear that there are some words, some phrases, some things that I don't like hearing that I would prefer people not say in front of me. It really, really, really bothers me when someone takes the name of my Lord and Savior in vain, especially when putting the F word in the middle of it. That bothers me on a very personal level. I would very much prefer that not be said in front of me. There is a difference, though, between someone saying something that is gross and someone saying something that is an active threat. Stop it. Now, I bet that you might think that I might suggest something about whether or not Marjorie Taylor Greene is a woman, and that's why she's acting like this. Wrong again. No. There are a lot of women in Congress who have received plenty of threats and have not made it all about them and basically a thing to campaign on. Don't do that kind of a thing. It's gross. And also, if any of those first of all, whoever did them even as pranks should be arrested. And if there's any legitimacy to the pipe bomb threat, hanged in the town square. All right, I think that's ideologically consistent enough. Let me tell you why, speaking of women who are really funny in politics, Secretary of Education Linda McMahon from the top rope, pun intended. So you may remember we had a government shutdown. Now, we've all stopped talking about the government shutdown and, of course, the Clinton Foundation corruption files that have been delivered to the Senate because, we had to shout Epstein from the roof for the 413th time this year. Linda McMahon just released I'm not going to say it's a bombshell, but it's just a fun little pimp smack to those who think that the Department of Education is deeply necessary for this country.
The Democrats kept the government shut down for 43 days. Flights were delayed, SNAP benefits ran dry, small business and housing loans were frozen, but one major component of life for American families went virtually unaffected: education. The Federal Department of Education furloughed 90% of its staff. And what happened? Nothing. Schools stayed open. Students went to class. Teachers got paid. The shutdown proved our schools don't depend on Washington bureaucracy to function. If 90% of an agency supposedly governing education can disappear for weeks without disrupting education, do we really need it at all?
Yes, I love it. I do. I enjoy it. The government shut down. She's like, no one was here. I was watching Vince on TV. No one was in here to tell me, please stop making us watch WWE video.
I sat here playing Tetris. Please get rid of my job.
I love it so much. By the way, again, I'll say this. I really have no issue with Kamala Harris having spent her time as the vice president playing solitaire. The funny part of that story is that they didn't trust her to do anything after the border czar fiasco. So she sat there playing solitaire.
And drinking wine.
Instead of, governing, because the VP has nothing to do. That's the job.
Except make baller memes when you're doing it right.
Again, if we had an Office of Education, instead of a Department of Education, nothing would change in this country whatsoever. And yeah, a lot of the Department of Education should in fact be assumed under Harmeet Dillon's Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. So that's one excellent point here. So I do want to take a few questions on mail time this evening that I think are pretty spectacular. So as a former teacher and administrator, there was a question that popped in that caught my eye, and it's from good friend of the show, excellent dude, and phenomenal taste in watches, David Maskura. He says, Tony, what about teachers who have sex with students? They should they have a harder sentence for betrayal of their code of conduct? But they don't. They usually they hide behind the law. I'll say this. Absolutely, those who are in a public official facing position. Let me explain. Those who are in the clergy, those who are in education, those who are in political positions, those who work at daycares, those who work in the medical field. If you are convicted of a sexual crime, especially towards a minor, absolutely the punishment should be steeper. I'm not going to postulate on what I think that the punishment should be steeper, but again, I'm very aware of the culture of, here's a story you didn't ask for. When I was at Lawrence North, I sat in a conversation with some of the male teachers in the science department that really shook me to my core. And it was how casually they talked about when they were younger, the male teachers having sex with female students in high school and how common that was. And I sat there shocked because what? And it was extremely common. And apparently, according to the stories. And they didn't tell them as though they were bragging. They said, yeah, this used to be a really common thing. I don't care. If you as a man cannot keep it in your pants, if you as a woman cannot keep your pants closed, and you have to get a student, I'm sorry. The idea that, they were in high school or whatever, absolutely not. You can't handle the risks. Don't play the game of being a teacher. You can't handle the consequences that may come with sexually molesting a student. I don't care if they're 17 and they were just right there. No, I don't broker anything like that. Nope. And I think one of the comments from Mountain Grown, anyone who is supposed to be a safe person, this punishment should be worse than other positions. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. 100% believe that's correct. So one of the other questions that I wanted to dive into also was a fun one. Who does this guy think he is? Hi, I'm Tony Kennet. I'm the Daily Signal's national correspondent. I spend all day bothering producer Nick with little TV interviews where I get on TV and tell everyone to go touch grass and stop hyperventilating. And then I hop on here and I do the Tony Kennet Cast, our flagship show for the Daily Signal. And then I turn around after this show and record the top news in 10 for the next morning. Because some of you guys don't want to hear my Hoosier drawl and would rather me just get to the freaking point. So that's exactly who I think I am. So that said, I would like to get to one final thing. One final thing before the evening. This psycho thinks everyone should listen to him. No, you don't have to listen to me. Go watch something else, my dude. I'm just glad you guys are tuning it in at all in the first place. One other piece of news before we shuffle off this evening. Something that I really wasn't expecting to be in the news, yet nevertheless, we continue to get very, very strange stories. So Lindsay Halligan is now asking a judge for an emergency hold on the Fitzpatrick exceedingly rare order, which would have forced the Department of Justice to turn over all grand jury materials, including recordings, to Jim Comey and his team. So essentially what's going on right now is a very weird legal battle between members of kind of the judicial academic class and making the case that James Comey, because there might be a question of political prosecution, that the grand jury's audio recordings and testimony, when they chose whether or not to indict him for lying to Congress, those need to be observed as what? Like some appeal court is going to drop in and say, the lawyer asked the jury a really bad question, and so therefore Jim Comey's entire case needs to be thrown out. No. Right now you have all of these judges and appeals judges that Chuck Schumer gladly threw into place and bragged about throwing into place that are trying to find any cracks and crevices they can to get individuals who committed very obvious crimes. Again, when you're looking at Brennan, when you're looking at Comey, they lied to Congress. Now, maybe the prison sentence for that's not going to be steep. Okay, the important part about this case is not getting James Comey or the rest of Barack Obama's cabinet or John Brennan, or later on in the Biden and Trump tenure, Christopher Wray. The point is not getting them for the lying to Congress charge, and then that's the thing. Legal cases in today's day and age revolve around discovery, turning over all of those documents that really can't be easily deleted so that now we all can look at them. Now we all can see that, oh yeah, like what's this Jeffrey Epstein email chain between him and a member of the House Democrats who were busy questioning Donald Trump in hearings? What's going on there? That's kind of weird. Why is Epstein coaching a Democrat on how to give questions to President Trump? That's a little strange, a little weird. That's the process of discovery. That's why this matters. And by the way, it is why, in my opinion, the vast majority of documents that go into discovery, especially in federal cases, should eventually be turned over to the general public unless pretty good reasons are given otherwise, especially in situations from government officials and high-profile criminals to other government officials and ancillary individuals in high-profile cases. And there's a lot of legal precedent for that in European and common law. So, those things aside, I think that we've just about covered the bases. Sorry, I'm checking. I thought I had one more story to get to before the evening. We'll talk about who Zoran Mamdani endorsed, some Palestinian activists, a little bit later. Mamdani and Trump might be getting ready to sit down and talk. New York City's a mess. And yeah, I think that'll be it for tonight. So we'll see you guys tomorrow. It's the Tony Kennet Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. As a final note before I say take care, down in the description is a link to our Discord where we chat, and you're more than welcome to ask any questions or just tell me that you think I'm a really awful person. Take care.